Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Let's talk about marijuana stocks, both US and Canadian. I'm working on uploading that presentation that I gave on an intro to US marijuana stocks, so that'll be on our channel at some point in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that. Probably stuff that you all already know, but again, it was designed for people who aren't really familiar with the stock world and getting their feet wet as far as exploring the space. So ACB had a bearish reaction to earnings and really sucked the wind out of the sector, which had some good momentum over the last few days that was now lost. Very similar to when CGC had earnings and sucked the momentum out of the sector there as well. So ACB, all things considered, is this a huge dump? No. We're at the price where we just closed right now, the low of 2 days ago. That's not a huge dump. We ran up 10% into earnings. We dumped down 10% in response to earnings. That being said, it almost was more negative for other names, not necessarily in percentage pullback, but again, just a slap in the face to the bulls who are just starting to look at shifting that momentum. What ACB is going to have to do for this sector to be saved is form a daily higher low and then break 650. If we cannot do that and we fade back down to 538, our recent low, that is going to likely mean that most names are going to test their summer lows again. A lot of the USMJ names have a lot of space to work with, 30% before we get down to that level, but a name like ACB, percentage space that we have to work with is only about 8 or 9%, and we can definitely fade back down to test those levels. So looking at how it played out on the hourly, the bulls have to change the hourly trend. We had a nice hold of 575, the low of pre-market. That was a great bottom fishing, or low of after hours. That was a great bottom fishing play because we did end up going a solid 5% to the high of the day from there, but we have to change the hourly trend for any kind of bounce to take place, and we have our low, high of the bounce. Bulls pretty much have to hold 575 and break 604 to change the hourly trend. Otherwise, we're going to keep pulling back. I would expect more volume today compared to yesterday. Very interesting. I'll have to think about that a bit. So CGC pulling back as well. No major red flags. If we had closed near the middle or the high of the day, this would still look pretty good. We did close to the low of the day, so that can tell us, all right, no major red flags on this pullback, but we may not be done. And if we do drop down under 26 tomorrow, then we're going to start getting those red flags. So we have our consolidation still underway. 26.36 was our low. So technically we're still holding that low at this point. Best case scenario for the bulls, if that level were to break, would be seeing the bulls buying that dip and closing near the high of the day at the end of that day, if that were to happen tomorrow. So a bear break with a lack of follow through could have us looking at the potential to still try and change this daily trend. But again, if we do not break over 28.41 in the next few days, bears are still strong. Cron held up pretty well, daily inside bar, multiple days in a row. Tomorrow, if we break 11.28, we're looking at the low of consolidation of 11.05. And if we get a bull break over 11.63, we're looking back at our recent high of 12.41. So with a range this tight, as the volume drops off, we know a break is very likely tomorrow. And we'll have to see which direction that break does occur. And there might be a day trade out of that break. Just looking for a short-term 1 or 2% flip. But I probably won't make that trade, as there is a lot of other better instruments, in my opinion, that'll give you 1 or 2% in the leveraged ETF world of commodities right now. APHA. So I did trade APHA after hours yesterday in terms of just looking for an overreaction in the sector from the ACB earnings. So I got filled at 660, but only partial position. I just saw the fall off a cliff. I said, okay, that's getting a little bit extreme. Had a position, let's see, 25% of my order filled at 660. I sold it at 670 because I got sick of watching. And that was just a very, very small win. But was looking for APHA to potentially be an opportunity in the weakness because of ACB. So the ACB caused weakness. But we're looking at this low of 663, and that right now is essentially a double bottom. If we break that level, that's a bit of a red flag. We have to see what the volume looks like on that break and how much follow through the bears can get Bulls can definitely still save this, but they have to show up tomorrow. If we don't see a green day tomorrow in the sector, we're definitely going to be going into this weekend with a bit of a dark cloud overhead. So the next support after 663, looking down at 640. And we now have a clear little daily resistance, 714 and then 704. I am still interested in APHA, but I did stop out and did not swing my position into the ACB earnings reactions because, again, you have to view it. If you are swinging a position during those earnings, you are gambling on what the reaction to earnings are going to be. And I just don't like gambling in a 50-50. I'd rather have the odds more in my favor. TLRY did a pretty good job of holding on. Our daily higher low is set at 29.07, and the Bulls now have to break 33.66. Break that level, and we have the first daily trend change in a while. So that's a pretty good sign, the fact that we held up well, but still some work to do. The Bulls need another 6-7% just to get up to that resistance level. And more like 8 or 9%. VFF pulling back as well, looking at the low of consolidation so far, 1135, and resistance is 1240 and 1253. So all names are looking at their low of consolidation at this point. Some names have already broken it by a few pennies, not convincing breaks. But again, I laid out the ideal scenario over the past weekend. Consolidate to start this week, break to a higher high by the end of this week, and we can always speculate if ACB gave bullish earnings, we probably would have seen that happen, but that was not the case, and this is not the ideal scenario, so I'm disappointed with the Bulls, because that's what I said last weekend. If we don't see it, it's disappointing, so I'm back in the conservative and cautious mindset with the Bulls unable to prove it to us. OGI, a little lower high and lower low, support is down at 434, resistance of 495 and 518. Very similar charts out there. Hexo is pulling back, closed at the low of the day. We're going to look for a higher low compared to 493, and essentially what we're watching at this point is a long, drawn-out equilibrium, and that's a potential play I may be interested in. If we were to get to hourly oversold conditions down in the mid to low 20s, that's when I'm going to be looking to begin scaling in for a play off of 493 support, anticipating that we will stay within this equilibrium for at least one more move into next week, and maybe through next week. VGW, big red day. Definitely don't want to see that increased bear volume, giving back 2 bull days and 1 red day. We have a daily higher low at 339. The Bulls have to hold that level. But again, this is not ideal consolidation. This is pretty much the worst kind of consolidation that you can see if you're looking at the Bulls to try and make a move. And the weekly time frame for VGW certainly looks like that lower high has been set compared to 405. I drew in the video yesterday that if the Bulls are going to change this trend, have to form a right shoulder here and then break over 390. But we'll have to see that over the next couple of weeks if that can play out or not. So there's something I wanted to talk about with the USMJ names that I forgot, so I'm going to add in this little clip, but it is essentially reminding myself this past week how much I really dislike trading on the OTC and how it's completely different than trading on the NASDAQ or the NYSE. And the clear distinction here happened in both directions, and it's just market makers creating a liquid market, but it's not. And they're not truthful with the bid and the ask. So if you're on the NYSE, you're on CGC, the bid and the ask, those shares are there. And if I market buy or limit buy at the ask, I'm going to get filled in seconds, and the shares that are there are going to disappear based on what I buy. So with the OTC, what's happened multiple times this week alone, and I've seen it plenty of times, but I place an order, and I'm going to make up some numbers, but let's say OH, 5,000 shares, and I place a buy, a limit buy at the ask. At the ask right now, there is 6,000 shares on, let's say, 810. And as soon as I press that buy, as soon as that order is received, the bid and the ask change. And I'll get filled for maybe 10% of my order when the amount of shares that were displayed there should have filled my entire order in one go. They fill 10% of the order, the ask disappears, and now I'm the top bid with the rest of my order that did not fill. Likewise, when I was taking profit earlier this week, I would limit sell into the bid, and if there were 1,000 shares on the bid and I'm selling 3,000 shares, I put my sell order in, and again, they partially fill me a tiny amount. The bid disappears. The bid and the ask flash around a little bit. and then my order becomes the ask. So it's the market makers putting up false levels and then changing it to adjust to the orders as they're coming in. And it just shows me a lack of volume. They're able to do this when things are really illiquid, and they can take the time to mess around with what these orders are doing. And it's just them shaving off 1% here or there whenever they can with their own stash of shares. And it's just frustrating because that's what happens in the OTC with these market makers. And it'll be great when these companies are no longer on the OTC. So this stops happening and trading is much easier. CWebb, green today. One of the strongest names that stood out on my screen. We had a 6-7% green day out of nowhere. And the strongest names pulled back hard, and the weaker name, which was CWebb over the last 4 days, saw a big bull move. So our base of support now on CWebb is 2094, 2096. And for the bulls to prove themselves, they have to break 2381 here and get this follow through. Looking at the weekly chart, yet to break the pattern of a lower high each week. So it's all about that resistance level for follow through. OH, big pullback today. So some solid bear volume to match that bull volume. Everybody that was going to buy the reaction to the MedMen news bought and left today was only profit taking. So I rebought the position that I sold, and I'm trading the OTC ticker on the US, so my numbers aren't going to line up, but I rebought on the way back down for 4.5% cheaper than what I sold half of my swing position at. So just lowering that cost basis a little bit. Bought a little bit early as we did close near the low of the day, but that was perfectly fine as it is a longer term outlook. If we see weakness tomorrow, and if we see red and a pullback to hourly oversold, I will enter another position for a short term play where I'll just be looking to trade that and flip it for a couple percent as opposed to looking to maintain a position for the longer term. But this is a red flag. The size of this pullback now increases the odds significantly, where even if we keep the daily high or low of 784, we will then have to be cautious of a head and shoulders if that holds, where we bounce, set a lower high, and then roll over. That will be a possibility. And that's what we have to be watching for. So again, note the fact that I'm in OH positions right now, and it's a swing that I've been in for quite some time, and I'm talking bearish about the stock. A lot of people can't do that, but that's what I see. It's a red flag. We close at the low of the day. The size of this pullback, giving back this much of the move, is not ideal whatsoever. 2 red days in a row with a solid amount of bear volume over the average. There are red flags out there, and you better believe I'm going to be protecting myself against the possibility of a right shoulder forming on this potential head and shoulders. That's all if we can hold 784 support tomorrow, which is about 2.5% away. And again, if we head down to that level, it's a potential hourly oversold bounce play for a bottom fishing play off that level. Curaleaf, big pullback today as well. Again, giving back 3 bull days in 1 red day. Support was down at 957. Again, if we hold 957 and bounce, it's the same setup for the potential of a head and shoulders pattern. And due to the size of the pullback, it makes it less likely that we're going to see just a continuation move to keep the daily uptrend going. That is not the most likely scenario due to the size of the pullback. We're now cautious of, if support holds, of inability to get back to the high and then rolling over to lose the daily uptrend. So that's going to be on watch. 957 key short-term support, and watching for the potential of a lower high on the bounce. TRUL held up very well. Daily inside bar, no red flags, healthy consolidation. Looking at it on the hourly chart, no red flags. If we were to drop down and break 1195 tomorrow, we lose the hourly uptrend, and daily consolidation is underway to look for a higher low to form. But all things considered, with the brutal day that Curaleaf and OH had today, TRUL bulls are pretty pleased that they didn't get back more of their bull move from the last couple of days. HARV continues to pull back. It gave us the red flag yesterday. It followed through with that today. Again, we are going to look for a higher low compared to 531, but this is certainly giving back much more of this move than the bulls would hope for, and we're going to look for an equilibrium like that, something along those lines into next week. Have to change the hourly trend for our daily higher low to be established. GTII Also pulling back, increase in volume, not ideal on consolidation. Anything above 1117 is a daily higher low, so the daily uptrend is not in jeopardy. But again, is this a pattern that indicates likely continuation or a pattern that indicates likely tightening ranges? And because we closed at the low of the day and because of how much we pulled back at this point already, we have to be cautious of a daily lower high whenever we do bounce. MedMen, the red flags were there. We closed at the low of the day. We're looking right back down to 251 support. The red flag was the inability to get any follow through resistance in what was supposed to be bullish news about the step forward with closing their deal, and just multiple resistance breaks, short-term resistance breaks with zero follow-through. That's the same thing that happened to CWebb. CWebb failed to break resistance and then saw a solid pullback. So failure to break resistances with any meaningful follow-through can be a sell signal just as much as breaks of support can be a sell signal. IAN, daily bear flag, is about to confirm, testing our lows of 308. And after 308 comes 3 psychological. New daily resistance is 333, and still the weakest name in the USMJ sector. So that's where we stand overall. Again, definitely disappointing. Got to call it like we see it. This is not the week that the sector was looking for. S&P 500 hit all-time highs today, and ACB bearish earnings completely overrode market strength and sucked the wind out of the sector. We'll see if they can hold on. Again, some names are holding on. TLRY, CGC, no major red flags. Give me a red day tomorrow, and it's definitely weakness into the weekend. I appreciate you watching. I'll post when that presentation is uploaded, and we'll see you over the weekend. Have a good rest of your night. Gonna go see Lettuce tonight for some funk music, and we'll end it here with some guzheng. Don't know how to pronounce it, but it is a Chinese string instrument.